So Andrew and I thought we'd have a conversation today about hypothetically what would happen in terms of workplace consequences if it transpired that a CEO and a chief people officer were posted on TikTok and viewed over, I think it was 34 million times. They were caught in a compromising position, and how would that translate into the workplace with two individuals in, well, obviously extremely senior positions. So relationships amongst peers, you might not have so many issues, but as you get higher up the ladder, it's more of a conflict of interest potentially, isn't it, and other issues. So what do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things you see with workplace relationships, particularly if there's an imbalance of power, so someone who's got responsibility for line managing somebody else, is you get allegations of bias or unfair treatment.
Thinking in terms of, let's imagine a complaint's made against the CEO and you've got the chief people officer who's investigating that. In terms of, they might not even be aware that there's something going on, but their loyalty in that relationship, is potentially going to skew the fairness and impartiality, isn't it? There's so many issues. I mean, imagine chief people officer had a run-in with somebody, didn't like them, goes to the CEO and says, this has happened today. Lends a very sympathetic ear, clearly cares about this person, then in terms of how they're going to deal with that person, then, might not be ordinarily the way that they would if they didn't have that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's the issue whenever you've got, again, an imbalance of power or someone with a responsibility of line managing somebody else. You've always got the allegations that a process isn't going to be fair. So, for example, they're not managing sickness in the same way, they're not managing lateness in the same way, they're not managing performance in the same way. So something that one colleague might be pulled up on, the partner of the manager isn't being pulled up on. And of course that causes all sorts of internal issues and resentments, potential grievances. So it's an absolute minefield.
Yeah, and if, I don't know, she's got an initiative that she wants, that she thinks is a good idea, she puts it to the CEO, maybe somebody else has got another initiative, guess who's getting approved?
Exactly. She's having the favours, so to speak, isn't she? And again, the resentment that must cause in a team is huge under those circumstances, and it causes all sorts of operational issues for the employee.
Also, how does someone get that role of chief people officer? How long has that been going on? Have they been given that job as a result of the relationship? There's so many different parts to it, aren't there?
Well, quite. I mean, that person could be the absolute best candidate for the role, but if they're in a relationship with the person that gave them the job, then that suggestion is always going to be hanging over them that they only got the job because they were in the relationship with the manager. And that doesn't have to be a romantic relationship either. I mean, I think you can extend that to family members and friends as well. So it's always good to make sure when you are recruiting to make sure that that panel is as unbiased and as impartial as you can possibly get it.
Absolutely. So what do you think would happen in this event then? Do you think, because I don't know what's happened in that actual situation and I don't want to speculate over it, but I mean, somebody clearly needs to go. In this situation, I don't know if probably they'd resign or leave it up to a process. But in terms of, we'll come on to in a minute, in terms of damage to reputation as well. I mean, ultimately, the person with the most accountability is the CEO, overseeing the whole company.
What you need to be really careful of in these situations where you are thinking, right, one of these has to go, is that you're not leaving yourself open to claims of sex discrimination. Because obviously if you're picking the female employee to go, then there's potentially a direct sex discrimination claim there, which of course you always want to avoid.
Also a factor is in terms of why are we dismissing somebody? So yeah, we talked about the potential conflict of interest and maybe they've breached a company policy that was existing or something like that. But also in terms of damage to reputation, calculating damage to reputation is difficult, isn't it? So on that one, a lot of people are speculating online is actually, has it been detrimental? Because some are claiming that that situation would be a brilliant marketing tactic, because imagine how many people are now looking at company name, which I won't mention, and also traffic through their website. How detrimental has it actually been? Quite a big case not so long ago about the school teacher sharing her religious beliefs. And a key point of that was, in terms of damage to reputation, was the school overestimated the damage to reputation, and actually the tribunal wanted to look at, tell me what actually has been damaged rather than what you foresee to be damaged.
Yeah, it's very difficult to calculate damage to reputation, bring the company into disrepute. I would always say you need to have cold, hard facts around that. So things like loss of contracts, really adverse publicity, perhaps employees refusing to work with certain individuals.
And in terms of investigations on things like that, getting somebody in impartial at this point, potentially?
I mean, absolutely. It's going to be very difficult, I would have thought, for them to find someone totally impartial. But then that's where outsourced services such as ourselves come into play, because you can get someone completely independent from the organisation to look at it impartially.
Also, emotional impacts now and the disruption within the organisation. This is going to be absolutely huge in the business right now. The upheaval, the productivity, the change that's going on, all of this is going to trickle down and just shake up everything. I mean, I studied it at uni, change management. Even the smallest change in the organisation. So if the CPO resigns, there's going to be a huge shake up there. Someone's going to have to get promoted. Suddenly we've got new managers. There's a new dynamic there of teams forming, generally employee morale, like you said, productivity. There's so much in terms of how it's going to impact the business.
Yeah, that's a great point, Amy. You know, it's one of the hidden costs of these sorts of things, isn't it? And taking any action against anyone in the workplace, there's a trickle down effect, as you said. There's the gossip. There's the lack of productivity because they're gossiping. There's people moving around the organisation, and all of a sudden you're a very good employee who's only there because they love their line manager. Their line manager has now moved on to other things within the business, and perhaps as a result of that, your fantastic employee thinks, do you know what, I don't like my new line manager, I'm going elsewhere. That could be your best salesman.
So Andrew, have you got any advice for employers on avoiding this situation?
A lot of companies do have relationship policies. I think that's very important to have. You're never going to stop people from having relationships with each other. I mean, it's human nature, isn't it? However, what the policy will do is it will govern that relationship. So you can say that if you have a relationship, it has to be disclosed. It can say that if you're in the same team, you could be moved to different teams. I think it's about then making sure that there's a lot of openness and transparency around the relationship to avoid the allegations of unfairness, of people not being impartial, of people getting favourable treatment.
Because obviously, you know, at the moment we're talking about a senior level, but these can be issues and maybe just, you know, normal line manager level as well. You know, the same or similar issues. And it's not just about a preventative, because ultimately people are people, and if they're going to get in a relationship, then they might go and do that. But then if they do, as a result, you've got this policy in place, you've communicated to them the standard required, and then if you do decide to take any action, you can evidence that.
And you know what? We've talked about line manager responsibilities, but actually, even within a team, you've got perhaps 10 people who might be at a relatively low level. 2 people are in a relationship with each other. There's a messy breakup. The first issue you've got is if one is still pursuing the other, potentially that's unwanted conduct of a sexual nature, which is sexual harassment, which causes the employer difficulties. But even something as simple as there being, I don't know, team girlfriend, team boyfriend within that department, you could put a massive split in what was previously a very well functioning.
If you think your organisation will benefit from relationship policy, you can get in touch. Hope you find that interesting.